Welcome to DIYeasycrafts.com. How to make Scotch Brite Micarta Knife Scales. So this knife handle was going to be for this rustic scalloped blade drop point knife. I wanted to do something just a little bit different. I played around with a couple of different variations of micarta in the past, and this time I thought once again I would try something a little bit out of the ordinary. What I came up with was micarta made out of a Scotch Brite pad, and the end result was pretty impressive. It gave a nice swirled pattern to it, a very interesting looking piece of micarta. Anyway, started out with fiberglass resin and a bright blue Scotch Brite pad, which I found down at the local supermarket. I'm going to use the top of a Chinese food container. I put the Scotch Brite pad into that, and I'm going to just mix up a little bit of fiberglass resin. This is just an experiment. I'm not really sure how it was going to come out at this time. I did want to color the resin a little bit, so I added a little bit of black modeler's paint. It has to be an oil-based paint. I probably added a little bit too much black. It came out a little bit darker than I would have wanted. So the next time I do it, I'll probably just add a little bit less, or maybe even try a different color, like a dark blue maybe. I mixed that up. Of course, I added the hardener to it, and I also added a piece of wax paper underneath that Scotch Brite pad. And then I just poured the fiberglass resin right over the pad. Now, just to make sure that there's no air bubbles, I just took a stick and I just pushed down on the Scotch Brite pad, and back and forth, basically over every square inch of the pad, just making sure that the pad itself was completely saturated with that fiberglass resin. Once I had enough resin in the container, I did want to compress this a little bit, just so that you end up with a flat surface on both the top and the bottom. I added another piece of wax paper on the top, and I just laid a paving stone that I had laying around on top of it. Unlike conventional micarta, like paper micarta, you don't really want to press it with clamps. It would just become too thin. I really wanted, this Scotch Brite pad is probably only a 1/4 inch thick to begin with, and I didn't really want to lose any of that thickness. Anyway, after it dried, this is how it popped out of that container. And already I can see some of those blue swirls that I was looking for on the dark background. So at this point, I think it's going to work, and I think it's going to come out pretty decent. This particular Scotch Brite pad was one of the small ones, and kind of after I made it, I realized that it wasn't enough material to make full handles or full scales for this knife out of. So what I decided to do is I cut it into a couple of small strips, and then I'm just going to use that as a highlight piece in between the brass bolsters and a dark walnut. So in order to accomplish that, I put another piece of wax paper down on a board, and I'm just gluing that smaller section of the micarta onto a piece of walnut. And I just used a 2-part epoxy for this. Once that epoxy was dry, I sanded the bottom surface of that walnut micarta combination, the side that is going to attach to the blade. So I'm just making sure that it's completely flat because I'm going to add liners. I'm not worried about the top of it being uneven. I'll grind that all down afterwards. I'm just going to use fiberglass or micarta liners. I wanted to stay with that blue, so I'm using a blue construction paper, and I'm just going to add some fiberglass resin with a brush to both sides of that construction paper and make a pile. And I think I did 5 small sheets in each pile, one for each of the scales. Then I added fiberglass resin to the bottom of each one of those handles, and I placed them right on top of the micarta liners. So the first one is already in position. Here's the second one. I'm just going to put a little bit more fiberglass resin onto it. Make sure that all of the little holes and divots are completely filled with resin. Put it right up on top of that blue construction paper. This is just one of the tricks of the trade that I like to use. I wear 2 pairs of gloves. I can just peel off that external pair and I can continue working. I'm going to add a little bit of wax paper onto the top of both of these knife handles, just so that the fiberglass doesn't stick. And then I'm just going to weigh it down. Again, you don't need a press, you don't need clamps. I'm just going to use a couple of small bricks, and that will just press those handles down into the micarta liners, and they will, once this dries, all become one unit. So it'll be walnut scales with the Scotch Brite Micarta inserts with a blue liner. Now, I attach them to the blade just like you would any set of scales, 2-part epoxy, 1/4-inch brass pins, and then this micarta works just like wood does. I use the belt sander a lot to grind it down to the finished shape of the knife. You can use a Dremel grinder, any way that you would normally work your knife handles. I also like to use a Dremel grinder with this drum sanding wheel, and I use that to make all of the small carvings and round over all of the edges and really make this handle fit your hand very comfortably. When this is all done, I will sand off the entire handle, including the micarta, with a 220 grit paper on an oscillating sander. I find that you don't have to go too much more than that, and then I do put it on a buffing wheel. Now, after you buff it, you really see the characteristics of this Scotch Brite micarta, and the finished product I thought was pretty dynamic. A very easy project, very easy do-it-yourself micarta. Scotch Brite is available in a variety of different sizes and in different colors. So it'd be interesting to see what other combinations we can come up with. If you like this video, I ask that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Please check us out on the web at DIYeasycrafts.com. Thank you.